Hello and welcome to another MovieBoozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and I'm joined today by Hawk Ripjaw,
Hello.
Bill Arsena,
Hey.
and and no one else. So this week we have, we're going to quickly return to our discussion of It, since I managed to see it. But I'm also going to talk about, and we're actually two of us have seen now, 9/11.
Charlie Sheen's 9/11, not the event. I mean, we all saw the event, so you know.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
We get to see the event happen again in the movie. The movie's made up mostly of the event, but we'll get to that. Yes.
Yes, and then we have a few other things to discuss, including Bill wanted to talk about the new Twin Peaks a little bit. And you said you saw a documentary called The Bomb?
Yes, it's on Netflix.
On Netflix. All right.
It's about the atomic bomb.
As opposed to the other bomb.
Yeah, as opposed to the other one.
The bomb.
The bomb, yes. The sex bomb. It's other than that.
The sex bomb?
Sex bomb?
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Did we have any other movies to discuss? I think we got that covered.
I feel like we did, but I'll let you know if it comes to mind.
Kapazinski? I don't know. I mean, like...
Oh, go ahead.
Hawk and I will save our Len Kabaczynski talk for our next episode for certain.
Yes. They released an image of David Harbour as Hellboy.
Yeah, I saw that.
He looks a lot like the other Hellboy.
Pretty much just like, except he looks a lot more ripped. It doesn't. It's not like he doesn't look like he's wearing a costume. It looks like that's actually who he is.
Yeah, his hand is a little bit different. His hand looks a little more mechanical, almost. Or at least the stone is more defined and not cracked like Ron Perlman's was, and he looks a little bit meaner.
Yeah, I guess that's what they're going for, like the R-rated thing.
It's going to be R-rated. It's directed by Neil Marshall and also starring Mia. Is it Jovovich or Jovovich?
Mila Jovovich.
Oh, okay. She's in it too. She's the bad guy.
Oh,
Mia Jovovich?
What?
You completely got that one wrong.
Yes. So, well, we're going to talk about it. Since I saw it.
No, about it. Yes.
We're not doing this fucking joke again.
No, I know. I just wanted to clarify that it's it, not we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah,
we got to kind of pause.
We're going to talk about Andy Muschietti's 2017 update of Stephen King's It.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Andy Muschietti movie.
Andy Muschietti.
Is it really pronounced Muschietti?
I've heard it both ways, and I thought it was Muschietti, but I watched a video that he narrated, and yes, he pronounces his own name Muschietti.
It sounds like a Family Circus cartoon where it's like the kids trying to pronounce spaghetti.
No, it sounds like a gangster, like Andy Spaghetti. Hey, Spaghetti.
Hey, this is my movie. Don't say I never did nothing for you.
Go get your fucking shine box. By the way, that actor died today.
Oh yeah!
Wow, what a way of bringing that up.
Well, everyone's using that meme, the shine box meme, and it's because he was famous for that delivery. It wasn't so much what happened to his character; it was that he was just a good actor, a good character actor, and it was really sad. He died from complications of heart surgery.
Yeah, so. Really unfortunate. When I heard about that. So back to talking about it.
Okay.
So it
you had some very different thoughts than
you did not like it as much as Bill and I did.
No,
yes.
I did not like it that much. No, not that I hated it. Here's the thing about it. I'm going to keep going with this. No, I'll stop. The fact is that this movie is two entirely like different tones packed into a single movie. On one hand, it wants to be, this Goonies, Stranger Things kind of thing where you watch these kids experience, experience this fantastical thing and go on an adventure and learn that working together is the best way that they can fight this evil that they've encountered. And on the other hand, you've got a really, really base. It's like they took this story and threw in modern horror conventions that just feel completely off base from the rest of it.
How so?
So the fact that they relied so heavily on jump scares, and the jump scares were I completely agree with the review that Red Letter Media said for their half in the bag that every single time it appears on screen, they have to throw this loud noise at you to try to wake you up, and it's not it. Not once did I find that scary. It might startle you, but that's because it's a loud fucking noise. That is not an excuse to cover up your. It felt disingenuous.
I think that the fact that the jump scares were all pretty heavily telegraphed was partly a good thing because it didn't have any fake out jump scares. It wasn't like ooh, it's a cat, or like, something fell down. Like everything was real in terms of what the jump scare was illustrating. Even though loud noises, that's, I agree with that in the review, but it's kind of just, that's part and parcel with how these horror movies operate now. It's part of the sound mix.
That's the problem.
And I'm not saying that it's not, but I think they made it effective in the movie.
It didn't work for me. That hearing that every time it happens, it takes away from even the scare of the moment because you're focusing on just that loud, annoying screech that you hear that has nothing to do with anything that's happening on screen. Also, the shots where it is running at a character and they have the shaky cam bobbing to side and having it like wobbling towards the camera. I don't know. It really felt.
I think it was supposed to give you the feeling that he was floating.
Mm.
Yeah, I kind of
not to make that a recurring thing, but I think that's what it was trying to do.
So here's the thing. I'm not here to eviscerate it. I'm here. I'm here to point out that this is a movie that could have been a lot better if they had simply avoided some of these genre tropes that people have gotten so used to seeing. And look no further than, Stranger Things came out last year, and they had a lot of these spooky moments, and they didn't throw this, horrible, loud noise at you every time it happened. It let you get into the experience and feel what was going on. I'm also not a huge fan of the design of it. I'm a firm believer that clowns are spooky enough. If you had just a clown appear in a sewer drain, and talk to you, you don't need extra help to make that clown appear scary as shit.
I would actually I like the design of it because clowns in general don't really bother me at face value, no pun intended. So
how about a clown that a little kid encounters in a sewer drain?
Yeah, that scenario alone is kind of creepy.
That's contextual horror there.
But I think for a little kid who doesn't know any better, I mean, they might actually think maybe people do live in the sewer. I mean, I don't know. Some kids are kind of not bright.
Well, after all, they all float down there. If you didn't hear that enough. I know that's probably part of the Stephen King novel, but I'm sorry, it's not. They almost take
it to a literal degree. Like it's not supposed to be.
You find it.
It's supposed to be like metaphorical or something. Instead, they're like, no, let's have the kids float in the air, or let's have them say float the entire time. or let's do something with floating. Like,
what was that in the
that
novel?
was my one.
I never read.
I don't remember.
I believe it was,
because I don't see what the whole floating thing. I also don't quite understand Pennywise's end game with, because there were a bunch of people there. That does that mean that he didn't eat them because they weren't scared of him? And if so, does that mean he killed like a whole bunch of other people? And if he catches you and you're not afraid of him, he just makes you float?
I think I don't think he has an end game other than, I know these specific kids aren't afraid of me or are beginning to not be afraid of me, so I have to have this one crazy kid try to kill them. That was really only his end game, was that final plan to have another kid go crazy, Henry, and try to kill them, which didn't work so well.
Which Henry was already a crazy killer.
He just needed a little bit of a push to go even further.
Well, I don't even, what another problem I have with movies like this, and I had the same problem with Stranger Things, by the way, is it's an 80s trope, and I know that's why they're bringing it back, is the bully who is so vicious that they're basically ready to straight up murder children. It doesn't exist in real life, and it's disingenuous to suggest that it does. Bullies are bad, and they do horrible things. But this type of bullying, it's.
I don't know, dude. I mean, I was never bullied to that degree where I had some guy stabbing his name into my belly. But
also, what an idiot that he thinks that.
He thinks that's a good idea, right?
Yeah. Let me carve my.
That's not going to leave a trail,
because the police will not see my name written on his belly and think, "Hey, that might be evidence."
But I have read news stories over time that of kids doing horrible things to each other, even worse than just simply posting pictures of them on Instagram or something.
Sure, yeah. So I mean, there are.
It does happen that is pretty bad. And of course, again, this is a Stephen King story. He's not necessarily always ultra realistic.
Right. Well, one thing that is a pinnacle of a Stephen King story is people who are completely unreconcilably awful human beings, and generally they're people who you're supposed to I don't know. You're not supposed to empathize with them, but they're there and you have to deal with them, and they're usually really obnoxious.
So you and I kind of chatted about this earlier, Ken, and you said that this would have kind of amplified your enjoyment of the film had you known this. And there's a second thing, too, with the same situation with my friend. It is an evil force that is feeding into the evil of the rest of the town. So the bullies, the adults, when that kid Mike, he says this town is cursed. That's what he's referencing, sort of. He doesn't understand the scope of it, but all of the hatred and the evil in the town is amplified by the presence of it. That's kind of why the main bully, he went to his mailbox, found his dad's knife, and killed his dad with it because it was telling him to.
So had the movie made it more clear early on, I'm talking in the scenes before the bullies made their first appearance, or even not first appearance, even if they did it a little bit in, if they made it more clear that just his presence there is making people sadistic, in which case I would have liked to have seen also our main characters have moments where they were starting to go over the edge, because that didn't happen. And I think it'd be interesting to see like the kids realize where they're headed and come to their senses and say, wait a second, it's doing this to us.
Well,
and that would have been a way for them to get back together.
Well, they do that.
Their moment of breaking is it's not based around hostility so much as it's based around basic survival instincts, though.
Well,
and frustration.
Yeah, but the kids are not inherently evil. That's why they don't get that. They don't get to feed into that with its power. The other thing that my friend had said would have made him enjoy the film more, and I kind of agree is he did not realize throughout watching the movie that it is a cosmic being that hails from a different dimension at the beginning of Earth's time.
Yeah,
he was vomited out by a turtle or something.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that would have made the movie worse because that's
actually I kind of would have liked that just to throw that in there.
He doesn't get vomited out by a turtle in the movie. Like the original vision that the director had, and they didn't do this because there wasn't enough money in the budget. Was at the beginning of time. You know, there's creatures on the Earth and stuff. It crashes into the Earth and wakes up. And
wouldn't that be funny that there's dinosaurs around and there's this clown?
Well, it's yeah, that would be funny. I don't know if it'd be a clown though. I'd be curious to see
it'd be whatever its original form. Yeah, I got you.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if they had this if the movie opened up with this gigantic CGI turtle vomiting it up, and it had for no reason whatsoever had the voice of Crush the turtle from Finding Nemo.
That's an incredibly specific scenario.
I thought you were going to say Gilbert Gottfried.
Now you're a clown, dude.
Yeah,
hey,
bro.
I'm it.
Gnarly.
I'm here to eat children.
By the way, if you didn't know that, the guy who voices Crush is actually the director, Andrew Stanton.
Yeah.
Which is kind of hilarious because it's like the ultimate surfer dude persona. And anyway, but yeah, I don't know if that would have improved the movie. It would have. It would have certainly been a risk, and sometimes risks pay off.
Well, that's kind of part of what frightened me about the character It is the fact that it's not just a clown, it's not a guy, it is literally an evil, unstoppable force that feeds off of actual fear.
And one thing that the movie did right, I think, was in the finale. I have to give Skarsgård a ton of credit for his performance in the slow decline of his power, where he realized, if you notice, every time the kids did not show fear in front of him, he looked really disappointed at first, but over time he starts looking more and more gaunt and acting weaker and more desperate. And that de-evolution was fascinating to watch.
Everything about Skarsgård's performance was phenomenal. That's one of the best horror performances I've seen in an incredibly long time.
Well, I will say that he certainly made it such that I don't think anyone's going to say, "Oh, I miss Tim Curry," after they've seen the movie.
Sure, yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. Tim Curry's performance in the original miniseries was fun, and for the film they were making, it worked. It's also it's a horribly dated film, but you know that's TV movies. If you watch any TV movie, from probably the 1980s through early 90s, you just have to go in under the understanding that they did not have a big budget. The only time TV movies really had a significant budget was the 70s, and that was because for a while there, they were basically commissioning movies like Hollywood quality movie. That's why, like Spielberg's Duel, people watch it and are shocked that it was made for TV because it's kind of artful. Mm-hmm. Or if you've ever seen the horror movie The Night Stalker, it's a legitimately creepy vampire movie, and yet it was made for TV, and people don't even realize it.
Yeah, I mean, it is dated, but I don't know. I'm honestly not a huge fan of the miniseries. I didn't think it was very scary at all. I think Tim Curry's performance was fun, like you said, but it didn't frighten me.
Right.
It's but the first time
frightening for children.
Yeah, it kind of feeds into that you know, what a child would be afraid of. Mm-hmm. But however, hearing 2017 it speak for the first time was so cool. Just because like he sounds like, "Hey Georgie," like there's something not quite right about his voice. Like he's trying to play the role of a clown to entice children, but he's not 100% sure what that means. So he's kind of just winging it as he goes. Yeah. And it really sets you on edge right away. Like that, this is not a good thing that's happening right now.
This is why I would make an argument that Bill Skarsgård needs to be the star of the remake, inevitably the remake of Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Just have him be typecast.
Why popcorn? Because they're clowns. That's why.
What if he did start getting typecast as evil clowns?
I think.
As far as the tones, you what?
Okay, go ahead. I was going to make a Get Shorty reference, but that's okay. Go ahead.
And in terms of the tone, I thought it worked really well because of the kids have their joking stuff that they say, but they're kind of constant joking around and stuff, and even the stuff they say while they're being chased by it felt very, very organic in terms of what a 13-year-old would react to the situation. Like when they open the door and the missing girl is hanging inside the closet with her bottom half missing, and one of the kids is like, "Where the fuck are her legs?"
Mm-hmm.
And there were funny things like that kind of intermingled with the horror, and I thought it worked pretty well. But that was one thing that you had a problem with, right? Because you said different tones.
Yeah, tonally the switch off was frustrating to me because it would go from this moment where you have these kids acting like everyday preteen / teenagers, and then suddenly goes to this hard R like body horror moment that is just I'm not saying you can't make a movie that combines elements like that. I'm saying it didn't quite. Like, I'll give you a perfect example of a movie that managed it that well. A couple of years ago, Turbo Kid managed to get this childlike wonder out of a character mixed with some of the most violent, bloody kills you've seen in a movie. And something about how it was put together, it worked. And I don't know what it is about that blend that there's some unspoken thing that I can't conjure in my mind that makes one work and one not.
Well, yes, Turbo Kid was very cheeky.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
There was that one scene where the guy gets decapitated, and out of his neck is blood spurting, and in the midst of all this blood falling from this guy's neck, from the air, high enough for it to be almost like rain, Turbo Kid and his robot girlfriend. Or robot friend who's going to be his girlfriend momentarily, they have an umbrella over them, and they share a moment where they kiss.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very sweet, despite the fact that there's blood all over the place.
Right.
And there's a decapitated man just a few feet away.
It's definitely a power fantasy, which is, I think, kind of why that blend works, because it's fun all around. It has a couple of moments of emotion or fear, but they still are kind of slotted into the overall feel of the film. And I kind of see what you were saying about it, with that doesn't quite do it that way, but I think they still, the big thing with the kids was still driving home the fact that these are adolescents that are coming of age, mm-hmm. and they're trying to figure out what's going on with life right now, where they're going from here. One reviewer put it really well, is there's a big looming fear of the whole world being against you as a child, and you're waking up to realize that you're not going to be taken care of and comfortable for your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that kind of existential dread there with the kids realizing that, and that feeds into the horror as well, as they act in the way that they do to kind of fight against that as much as possible.
Well, I'll just leave the movie discussion for it at this. Yes, I do want to see Skarsgård and Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the sequel.
I am excited to see it Chapter 2 and see what they do with it, because at first it was projected to do like 60 to 80 million this weekend, and it's done well over 100, which and has broken 6 or 7 different records. So they're definitely going to make another one.
If they do, it's going to be with the adults, and I'm curious how they're going to make that dynamic work.
Yeah. Well, the child actors have already discussed, they've been asked, who would you like to see play your adult counterpart? And one of the biggest, most sought after roles so far right now is the girl. The buzz right now is that Jessica Chastain is going to be approached to play her.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense. Yeah,
I could see that. That's
because Chastain was in Muschietti's previous film, Mama, I believe.
Mm.
So you already have that connection there.
I cannot hear Muschietti without smiling.
Max Landis was on Twitter.
Hey, Andy Spaghetti. Whoa.
Max Landis was on Twitter complaining about it and some of the stuff. One of his biggest things was the floating kids. Why are they floating? And
yeah, I seriously have that question because I don't get what that is accomplishing.
Apparently, they are saved as snacks for later.
Okay, so what was he doing with her then? Because she wasn't afraid. So
she was bait. She was bait to bring in the other kids so that he could try to kill them.
Yeah, and when he opened his mouth, its true form are these things called the deadlights, and if you look into them, you go crazy. So he showed her the deadlights to basically put her into a coma, so to speak, and like Bill said, be bait for the rest of the kids.
The deadlights, is that from the book?
Yes.
I don't even know what's from the fucking book. I don't know. So.
What?
Yeah, it's just...
Okay. Yeah, don't. Yeah.
You shouldn't... I'll rephrase it. You shouldn't have to to know...
Right, you shouldn't have to read the book to know what's going on in the movie, but I never really felt that I needed to have read the book in order to get what was going on in this movie. I felt like everything was there.
Yeah.
That I needed to know. You know,
I'd say
I needed to be that I needed to be comfortable with to know. You know,
there's just extra flavor from the books that kind of supplements what you're watching. But I mean, they showed that he in his inside of him he has these lights which paralyze people. You know,
it's like all monsters do.
Yeah, when did that happen? I remember him.
That was the scene where Bev is talking to it. Like, remember she wakes up in the cave or the sewer or whatever, and there's that circus performance. Dun, 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 it's Pennywise, and then
which was really effective CGI.
Yeah, then he pops out, and then he's like, she's like, I don't fear you, and he smells her, and he's like, ew, yeah, you don't,
but you will.
But yeah, like, yeah, what are you bathing onions? What the hell? No.
And then he opens his mouth super wide with his sharp teeth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He has those. She gazes down his gullet, and he has these 3 little lights that look like they're on tentacles down there.
There are 4 lights.
3 lights.
What is that from?
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you were doing a Monty Python reference.
Oh no! There's an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where Captain Picard is being tortured, and one of the ways they torture him is there's lights on the ceiling, and he's supposed to tell them how many lights there are, and even if he gives the correct answer, they torture him anyway, to the point where he's by the end like screaming, "There are 4 lights!" Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were going to say, like, he has to count the dots on the ceiling.
Well, the
like, that'll drive you crazy trying to play that shit.
So here's the thing: the twist is the guy keeps telling the guy who's torturing him keeps telling him that there are 5 lights, and keeps asking him to tell the truth. You know that there are 5 lights, but there are actually only 4. And the idea is, by the end, he was almost convinced that he was seeing 5, even though there weren't. Which is something that people who've been put under torture and asked to lie towards the end of the process before they break down, their mind has gotten into like basically life-saving mode where it's ready to accept anything as true.
Yeah, that's I worked on a study in college which studied the same thing, whereas whether or not coerced confessions are admissible in court as evidence.
And the reason they're not is
they shouldn't be.
Yeah,
it's because the word coerced.
Yeah. Or I mean, it was more like the study's purpose was more like, can a jury detect the fact that a confession was coerced?
Oh, it wasn't like that was what they were called. It was okay. I got you.
Yeah, like based on read this transcript, would you still believe this person is guilty based on the content of the interrogation? With it being coerced, do you actually believe this? Stuff like that. Interesting stuff. How that interrogation shit works.
Mm-hmm. Search me. All right, so why don't we talk about Twin Peaks next?
Okay.
So you saw Twin Peaks. I did not. So
yes. Okay. All right. So
try to avoid spoilers because I still got to watch this.
Oh, this is hard to spoil. You know what I mean? Like this, it's also easy to spoil, but it's very hard to spoil at the same time.
So
like,
it's a David Lynch story. So at some point, there's gonna be like random shot of a bunny human thing.
No, not really like that. No.
That's Donnie Darko.
That's Rabbits. You're talking about his short film series Rabbits that he did as an experiment before Inland Empire.
Right, which wound up in Inland Empire to an extent.
Which was lifted directly for Inland Empire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Twin Peaks: The Return. After all these years, roughly 25, 27 years, which fits into the plot directly because
it's a direct sequel to Universal Soldier: The Return.
No, like what I'm getting at is in the plot of the original series, Laura Palmer, the character who it's all based around, the mystery is based around, the teenager who is mysteriously murdered and the FBI has to figure out who did it, that kind of thing. She tells Dale Cooper, played by Kyle MacLachlan, in a dream that she will see him again in like 27 years. And the show, that's how The Return starts, with that scene. And then it cuts to 27 years later, assumedly, and it's Cooper is still essentially in this dreamlike state, and he meets up with a character called the Fireman. I don't know if it's the Black Lodge or if it's just some random dream place, but
is the guy in the Red Room?
No, it's not the Red Room.
Okay.
Not yet. He does eventually go into the Red Room, but he's basically stuck in this like purgatory dream state. And the fireman says something to the degree of "You are very far away right now," and then he disappears, and then the show starts. I only caught the first 3 episodes before I started the marathon, which was done to promote the 2-part finale. This was not this past Sunday. This was the Sunday before. So I stayed up from 3 a.m. my time until about 9 p.m. my time.
Jesus.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I did take one cat nap that lasted maybe 2 minutes or so, spread out over 10 minutes. Like I kind of rested my eyes here and there, and then I just woke the fuck up and was like, "No, you got to keep watching." Yeah. So I was determined, like a motherfucker, to watch it all the way through in complete order as it was meant to be seen, like in that order. That was way too close together. That's like watching a whole movie for 18 hours. You're really supposed to. I got the feeling this was supposed to be more meant to be seen every weekend, and then mull over what you saw. Not that you can't watch it in a marathon screening. I certainly did. But it can be a trial. It's fun to do, but I would recommend only doing it maybe once. That being said, this was a very, very awesome experience to do, to try, and to view. Dale Cooper, and to kind of go over some of the early stuff that happens, Agent Dale Cooper, played by Kyle MacLachlan, he is stuck in this dream state with all these different characters and stuff, like from the past and from the future, and it's a place where timelines merge and nothing makes sense, but everything makes sense at the same time. It's that red room, the Red Lodge, that he eventually finds himself in. And meanwhile, in what we know as reality, the Twin Peaks world, there's a bad Agent Cooper. Who's not a member of the FBI anymore. He's known as Mr. C. He's got longer hair. He wears like a biker jacket, and he beats the shit out of people. He's also an assassin. He's also just a general murderer. and rapist. So he's running around. He doesn't want to return to the lodge to replace the original Cooper with or whatever, you know. So he's running around doing evil deeds. And then you also got another doppelganger named Dougie, who is in Vegas, who's just a total dumbass, and he's just there because Mr. C needed a decoy in the event that something were to happen to him. He'd have like a second version. So Cooper, after going through a dreamlike adventure where he lands in several different states, he sees an older Laura Palmer who gives him a message. He sees a tree branch at the end of an anus, and it tells him stuff. And then, you know, he eventually falls through a floor and weird castle in the middle of a sea that also opens up into outer space. And then eventually, through an electrical socket, he comes back to reality and takes the place of Dougie. But the problem is that he's in a stupor. He's kind of like, not comatose, but he's kind of like walking around funny and repeating what everyone's saying because of the process of bringing him back to reality, of course. None of what I just said makes a hell of a lot of sense upon hearing it. But somehow when you're watching it, you're absolutely captivated. It's like they're giving you these little clues as to what's going on. And the first couple episodes, it's not made up all of this. These are just little scenes that happen here and there. They're the big scenes that I remember of those first few episodes, but they only last like a couple minutes or so. There's some really good stuff in here with the actual citizens of Twin Peaks, specifically the people that still work at the police department. One of whom is the sheriff, played by Robert Forster. He's like this. He's got this. I don't know. Robert Forster in his age now has this really interesting demeanor of wisdom, you know, and he plays that off very well, almost like he's a cowboy. It's kind of interesting. There's the cool thing about Lynch movies or TV shows or whatever, Lynch stories, is not so much the abstract nature of what you're watching, but it's also the awkwardness and the weird cadences of the way people speak and interact with one another. Like, all right, there's a great scene. David Lynch reprises his role as the chief or the director of the FBI, who's a friend of Agent Cooper's. And there's this one scene where he has this great back and forth with Miguel Ferrer, who unfortunately passed away this year, and he has this great back and forth. The two of them have great banters, but there's this one scene where they're in a hotel, and Miguel goes to visit his room, and Lynch is in the room with a young lady. They're not having sex or anything. They're just sitting on a couch together, and she's kind of flirting and stuff. So anyway, she leaves the room so they can have a moment to talk. And then Lynch explains and like why she was there. He's like, I met her downstairs. She says her sister was missing, and they're turnip farmers. So I said, don't worry, she'll turn up eventually. Ferrero, who's like not finding this funny in the least. He's like, I'm tired of this bullshit, that kind of look. And then they cut back to Lynch, and he was like, yeah, she didn't get it either. Like there's these conversations happen and they're not always the same kind of banter. It's not always like one person doesn't get it and the other person gets it.
Was there any point where he got in the you can tune a piano but you can't tune a fish joke?
No, he never did that, but there was a joke about the Cossacks. Okay. They're in a car, and Miguel says something about being car sick, and he says like, oh, the reason why the new agent in the front seat sticks her head out the window is so she doesn't get car sick. And then Lynch, who has a hearing problem, his character has a hearing problem, he says, the Cossacks are in Russia. We are in Idaho. And then then the other guy, Miguel Ferrer, says, car sick! You know, so throughout the series, there's always these like weird, lame, cheesy jokes.
Yeah.
And banter and conversations that could only take place between good friends or small town citizens.
Let me ask you: does the show still have the weird, off-putting soap opera-ish kind of feel that the TV series?
No, this actually is an evolution of that. In fact, they kind of ape on it a little bit. They kind of make fun of the fact that the show used to have the soap opera kind of soundtrack by Angelo Badalamenti, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who does a great score here too, by the way. But they kind of make fun of that here and there. But this show is a complete change from that. This is almost like where you would expect Lynch to go from after Inland Empire. This is the next step. There's Jim Belushi. There's a lot of weird cameos. Jim Belushi is in this. He plays a casino gangster, along with his character has a brother. They're called the Mitchum brothers, and they get involved with Cooper, who is still in a stupor, pretending to be Dougie. And so it's Cooper Dougie. That's kind of the name I gave him. And and the Mitchum brothers are like these good-hearted gangsters, but they're also still gangsters, so they might have to kill you if they have to. But throughout the whole show, at least towards the end, they're very good-natured and they're very kind towards Dougie because they end up liking him because he does something for them that they really enjoyed. It's a very weird show in how it takes very careful care of its details, specifically details that you don't think are that important in the overall whole of the piece, but these details are what makes up the piece. They are what matter. It's those little jokes here and there, or it's those little romantic moments between characters that maybe aren't the most important, but in the moment they are. There's oh my god, my favorite episode, I think this is everyone's favorite episode, has almost nothing to do with the main plot at all. It's part 8, and it's literally the beginning, the birth of evil. That's literally what the episode is about. It's the initial atomic bomb testing that took place in 1945, and out of that explosion comes the evil force known as Bob. That was introduced in the first series, in the original series. And Bob ends up creating all these different little weird spirit avatars that look like homeless people with cigarettes. Mm-hmm. And they walk around town and they infect people, and it's really fucked up and nasty and had that episode. So much. It's such a diversion from the rest of the show because the rest of the show follows these different plot lines, and then suddenly it all comes to an abrupt stop, and it's just this one oblong art piece in the middle of it, the whole thing that deals with the birth of American evil or modern American evil, and it's like what the fuck does this have to? I don't care. This is great, So I would highly recommend Twin Peaks: The Return. This is David Lynch's magnum opus. If you could call anything a magnum opus, this is what it would be. I don't know what he's going to do after this. Someone on Twitter joked that he should do Star Wars Episode 9.
I saw that.
And of course, it went to J.J. Abrams, which is a safe pick. But I was kind of like, you know what? Don't give it to Lynch.
I believe that joke.
Close. It was a joke, but I was like, being serious, don't give it to Lynch. He will not give you what you want. He'll just be fired off the set.
No, I believe the origin of that joke, though, was that David Lynch was approached to direct Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi, yeah.
And he turned that down. Not ready. Yeah, he turned it down.
Yeah, I remember that. So I would recommend The Return highly. It's only going to be on the Showtime app probably for another week, I think. And then I don't know what's going to happen after that. I assume it's going to get some kind of home release, big extended.
So Twin Peaks isn't going to be owned by Showtime. It's literally only going to be.
I don't know what the deal is exactly. All I know is when I searched for it on the Showtime Roku app, it said it's only available until mid-September.
They must have. Remember when David Lynch like was going to pull out of doing this series for.
Yeah, I remember that.
I wonder if maybe like he had some sort of a bargain where he retains ownership of the series or something.
It could be that case. I really don't know.
In which case, if he retains ownership, then that means he can do what he wants with the show once it's.
Yeah. Well, this whole project was a coup for creativity. I mean, Lynch got everything he wanted. Complete control to do everything and anything.
Which
he
is
got his own musical.
It's kind of weird because
go ahead.
Because Twin Peaks was a show that crashed and burned so horribly in the second season, and it's one of those things where how often do you see a series get brought back where they say, "Yeah, you know what, you can do whatever you want, no notes."
Right.
They tried giving him notes, and then he left, and then they said, "No, please come back. Please, we can't do this without you." And he's like, "All right, these are my terms."
Or maybe you know what? Maybe he's just holding out for more quinoa.
He very well could. He likes his quinoa.
That video of David Lynch making quinoa is one of the more fascinating things I've ever seen. Did you see that one, Chris?
No.
Hawk.
So, Hawk.
I'll have to watch it though. Is it just David Lynch making quinoa?
Yeah, but he's also telling stories about it.
It's 20 minutes long basically, and it's David Lynch making quinoa, and then every time that you have to take a break to
walk away from the stove.
Yeah, walk away from the stove. He starts telling this fascinating story about getting sugar water in Yugoslavia. And of course it's shot in black and white, and it's clear that it's probably some film student or something who's shooting him and interviewing him. And I guess, didn't it wind up as like a special feature on the Inland Empire DVD or something?
Yep, that's where I first saw it.
Yeah. All you got to do is type in David Lynch makes quinoa. It'll be the first thing that comes up.
That reminds me of when on the DVD for Once Upon a Time in Mexico, Robert Rodriguez had a recipe for pork, the recipe that Johnny Depp's character was eating in the movie.
Puerco Pibil, his 10-minute cooking school, which he's done subsequently on a few other DVD releases, actually.
Robert Rodriguez is an interesting person.
Yeah. I really wish he went back to making real movies for once.
You mean like Shark Boy and Lava Girl in 3D?
Yes. Actually, Hawk, that's exactly what I want, is Shark Boy and Lava Girl 2.
I love the Nostalgia Critic review of that movie.
I have not seen it, but I imagine it's probably eviscerating.
There's a lot of hate flowing through that review.
Well, I think
there's a lot of hate flowing through the movie too. You can tell that movie was made by a very angry person.
Yeah, an angry person making a movie for his kids based on an idea that his kids came up with.
He's like, I can't believe we're fucking doing this action.
Exactly.
Maybe
he is resigned to making this. He's like, yeah, my fucking son wants this stupid ass movie about a fucking lady with lava powers and a goddamn fish boy.
Maybe it was one of those things where he made like a birthday promise. I will make whatever movie you want me to make next. And then they were like, well, I have this idea for Shark Boy and Lava Girl. And he's like, oh, God damn it.
Yeah, he was thinking they were going to do something cool, like, another El Mariachi film.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah.
Like,
he's like,
kids
come on,
up
rocket launchers in the guitar case. And no, his kids cash in on this thing.
That is like a whole new way to view Robert Rodriguez now, is that he makes
his kids
every
run
movie.
his life.
Yeah, he makes every movie out of spite.
It's kind of what he does, yeah.
That's how Machete Kills felt, that's for sure.
That's how Sin City 2 felt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of bombs, Bill, you saw The Bomb.
And was it The Bomb? Yeah, kind of.
Because it was about the bomb.
Yeah, it was about the bomb, yes.
And who put the bomb in the bomb shabomb shabomb?
Oh, I don't know who did that.
Didn't she make that joke last week?
I didn't make it on air, so.
Okay.
Oh, okay. The Bomb is currently streaming on Netflix. It is a almost 1 hour. It's like 50-something minutes. I want to say 55 minutes. 55-minute long music video slash essay on the history of and current context of nuclear armament. And the philosophy behind keeping nukes and the reasons why we should get rid of them.
Reason number one.
It will kill everything. All. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the only reason it ever brings up is that, and also the fact that things could go wrong with like you think you just point and shoot, the missile could just blow up in your face.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So they bring that point up many times. This isn't like a documentary where there's some guy narrating the footage the entire time. This is literally like a music video using archive footage throughout in a very artful kind of way. It starts with these showcases of military power. You know, where you see like soldiers marching in synchronization with tanks and stuff like that in foreign countries. Mm-hmm. It starts off like that with shows of force, if you will, without having to do any forceful things. And then it moves into America, specifically the Cold War era, where and we see these like Lockheed Martin type propaganda videos that were made clearly for employees who were just joining the team. Mm-hmm. They're like, so this is how you can be safe around a nuclear weapon.
Duck
I'm
and
like,
cover.
Yeah, they do that. They do the duck and cover bit. Oh, they play that song. They play that cartoon with the turtle. They go through all that. They even show this funny fucking short film that's in black and white, of course, because it's from that era. And it's these people, like these kids or people going to market or whatever. And the second there's this flash of light off camera, they duck and cover.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
they hit the ground and cover their fucking heads. And it's the funniest fucking thing.
Duck and cover. Duck and cover.
Yes, it's the funniest fucking thing you'll ever see. Like this is going to protect you, you know?
Is this the one where everybody's bouncing around like Steamboat Willie?
Yeah.
It's not that old.
There is a bomb propaganda short film, which has everybody it has that Steamboat Willie look where everything is kind of bouncing. In that old animation Disney style.
That's the turtle.
Yeah, that's the turtle we're talking about, but it's not. But they do show that, but it's not. The footage I was talking about was like live action.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of the animation one.
Like they're just walking, and then immediately, they just dive for a trench or something.
It's like there once was a turtle named Bert, and Bert was so very alert.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And throughout this music video essay, there's this score by a band called Acid, or maybe it's called The Acid. Mm-hmm. It's like electronic kind of music, but it's not the kind of music you would dance to. It's very much number and with more of a purpose. It's like maybe you could dance to it, but you don't really want to in the context they're presenting it in. It's very much like it's a little hard to describe, how the Acid came up with their score, I guess. But all throughout, it's this footage of nuclear explosions, test footage. There's a lot of scary moments too that I wasn't expecting. I thought it was mostly going to be like I've been saying, propaganda, archival footage, that kind of stuff. But there's this one moment in particular where everything goes silent. There's no music at all. And all it is the after effects of a bomb, like the real after effects, like people scarred up and burning and, all that stuff. And, or losing their hair and having cancer, But on top of that, there's also these other scary moments where you got soldiers being told to march into a mushroom cloud.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. Like they only have gas masks on. tell them that they're going to be exposed to this nuclear radiation. It's not just their lungs, it's their whole body. Their clothes aren't what's going to protect them. And then the next thing they cut to is like this guy with his family in a bomb shelter, because they were like, get a bomb shelter, this will help the whole war effort, that kind of shit. And the guy's like cleaning his fingernails and his arms and legs and stuff. And the wife is like, is that really going to help get rid of radiation? He's like, trust me, honey, this will do the trick. A white man, a straight white man, cleaning himself furiously in front of his children.
So last year I spent about a week of my time watching movies about nuclear proliferation, and include things like watching the TV movie The Day After, which is a very, for the time, realistic depiction of how citizens would go about their lives in the wake of a nuclear strike from the Soviet Union. And there were some others that I watched, like there's this other movie called Nightbreaker with Emilio Estevez, which is about what you were talking about, the soldiers exposed to atomic radiation as a result of those tests. And then there's this other one that kind of made me think when you were talking, an animated film called When the Wind Blows. And it's an animated movie about an everyday kind of normal British couple, elderly couple, who hear on the news one day that war with the Soviet Union is inevitable and will be happening within days. And you watch for the first half as this old man and woman kind of prepare for the worst. They build like a shelter in their house and everything, and then the nuclear strike occurs, and the rest of the movie is watching them slowly die from radiation sickness. It is probably the singular most depressing cartoon I've ever seen.
Damn, that's rough.
And
they should have painted their house with lead-based paint.
Yeah, actually, there's this scene.
It would have been safe.
There's a scene in the cartoon where he's reading this pamphlet that the British government put together called Protect and Survive. And one of the things they recommend is painting their windows, because, painting the windows is going to help. And what's interesting about the movie, by the way, is it's based on a short story by Raymond Briggs. Raymond Briggs famously is known for writing the children's tale The Snowman.
Oh,
like if you've ever seen the Snowman cartoon, the animation style is like that, but involving watching people die slowly of radiation poisoning.
See, when you say the Snowman, I think of the Michael Fassbender movie that's coming out here in the next couple weeks.
Oh, yeah. That one, yeah, okay.
Which looks really good.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Snowman that is kind of a Christmas perennial favorite. It's like a half hour long, and there's no words in it. It's like some versions of it on DVD have David Bowie introducing it. It's actually really good if you've never seen it.
Okay. So The Bomb. Yeah. I would definitely recommend this, even though, I don't know, in my opinion, it kind of drags its feet occasionally, and quite often covers territory that I already knew of. However, it does so with an artistic flair that I wasn't quite expecting, and kind of broaches a few new things here and there. So I would definitely say this is worth seeking out on Netflix.
Well, all right.
I'll give it a shot.
And
well, howdy.
Howdy. So before we get into talking about another disaster, 9/11, God, I really quick want to reference the Rick and Morty episode that came out this week.
I was just about to shoot you a text message about covering that.
Yeah,
because I want to.
All right, well, Hawk, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
So a couple weeks ago, you had mentioned that thus far, every episode that we've seen pretty much filled all of the promotional stuff that we'd been shown prior to the season premiere, which meant that anything else that happened would be brand new footage that nobody had seen yet. And they teased it with Rick and Morty, going on a regular Rick and Morty standard adventure to Atlantis. And in true Rick and Morty fashion, the episode sets that up and then goes in an entirely different direction. It actually lets it's C-137, right? Their versions
Something
that they
like
are. Rick and Morty's C-137 go off and do their thing while they're kind of left with like, gee, I wonder what's happening over at the Citadel that Rick blew up at the beginning of season 3. And then we get to see that, and it's actually this pretty impactful and very unsettling episode about how Rick's and Morty's are surviving, I should say. I almost said thriving. Surviving in the ruins of the Citadel, and what that kind of means for the political climate of that place.
Well, what I found fascinating about this episode is because you have infinite possible Ricks and infinite possible Mortys, it stands to reason that there are infinite. All of the Ricks and all of the Mortys in this infinite universe are they are definitely Rick and Morty, but at the same time, they are every version of like you have the working stiff Rick and Mortys who work in factories and slave their day away. You have the Rick and Morty who is like a businessman and the head of a major corporation and stuff like that. And it's like it's blurring the lines between individuality and groups, and it's hard to explain what makes it so fascinating, but just the exploration of an entire city of people, which, by the way, Justin Roiland has to be given credit. He voiced literally everyone in that
he was the only voice actor in this episode, pretty much.
I think he was literally the only voice actor.
And he still, it was basically just a bunch of Ricks and Mortys interacting, but the just very subtle nuances he put on the inflection of every character, you never really thought, hey, that's Justin Roiland voicing different characters. You saw infinite Rick and infinite Mortys interacting with each other.
It was very Mel Blanc, I will say, because you never thought about the fact that you're dealing with multiple with just one person. You just assumed they were different people, different characters. So. But yeah, I
thought that the Stand By Me spoof was pretty good.
Yes. And Evil Morty is
that was a big ending to the episode.
I find it fascinating that Evil Morty is even more evil than Evil Rick.
There's a current fan theory going on that Rick is just Morty grown up, and that every Morty will eventually turn into a Rick.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. It is very, very interesting, and
that would be, actually, that's definitely in line with the show's time travel premise. So
yeah. So time travel? I didn't think the show was messing around with time travel too much.
Well, portal travel premise, but
okay.
Well,
they could potentially do time travel if they wanted to.
But didn't Dan Harmon say he doesn't want to do time travel because it's too complicated to get right?
They kind of have done time travel, just not like formal time travel.
Sure, yeah. In a roundabout way, they've done different types of time travel, but not in the Back to the Future sense, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was just this episode was gold. It was a gold mine. Everything. It was so dense. Everything in it.
Yeah, there's so much going on. It's also the parallels to the current political climate were really creepy. Mm-hmm. Especially with the way that they slotted the Rick and Morty schism into a sort of race relation commentary.
Yeah, where you have Morty Town.
Yeah, it's like Same old story, just Morty's killing Ricks.
And the gritty cop version of Morty.
Yeah.
who was so weathered and badass that he was domineering against a Rick.
He had bags under his eyes. He had a paunch. It's a good episode.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get into 9/11, which we'll get to, believe me, I really quick want to say I'm nearly to the end of the second season of Amazon's series Bosch. And if you haven't seen it yet, it's actually a pretty rewarding watch. I've been enjoying it quite a bit so far. It's basically it's a detective drama and based on the novels by Michael Connelly, who, if you're not familiar with his work, The Lincoln Lawyer was based on one of his novels.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a good movie. So, you didn't like it?
I nicknamed that movie The Plot Twist Lawyer because, especially in the back end, there's probably like 5 or 6 big twists. It's like, ooh, revelation! And I also find I find the concept very, I don't know. I think the movie hinges on one concept and has a very generic story apart from that.
I think for me, it was colored by Michael McConaughey's wonderful performance, and at the time,
Sure.
like he was starting to come back, and maybe it's because that was the first movie of the McConaissance that really got me noticing it. That I was like rose-colored glasses, but either way, Bosch is well acted, and something that I find fascinating as a fan of The Wire is it's like literally every 3 or 4 episodes, they introduce another character who was like, wait a second, he was on The Wire too. What the hell?
I keep seeing ads for Bosch when I watch stuff on Hulu, so I want to...
if you're a fan of Lance Reddick, he's a main character on the show, and the second season in particular, his character gets a big expansion. And
I do really like Lance Reddick. He's great.
Yeah. Well, you saw The Wire, didn't you? Or have you not?
I mean, like a little bit.
Oh, geez. Well, okay. Well, first of all...
The Wire is one of those shows that I acknowledge as being a very great piece of television. Fucking, like, it's a good... I know it's a good thing. I just haven't yet committed the time to watch it all the way through. Yeah,
okay. Well, I'll say this in advance. Prioritize that over Bosch, because The Wire is transcendent and...
Right.
I would say, in fact, at some point, I would be willing to even rewatch the entire series with you, if only just to convince you to watch it.
I still have to watch Game of Thrones, The Wire now, and The Leftovers.
I would prioritize The Wire over all of those.
Well, I was probably actually... How many seasons does The Wire have?
5 seasons, and they are... let's see. The first 4 seasons are like 13 episodes, and the last one is, I think, 10 episodes.
I was trying to find the expiration date for Twin Peaks: The Return, and if that's anytime soon, I will have to go for that one first. Just because I want to catch it before it's gone, because I really like Twin Peaks in the original season, and then it's season 2 for the most for in some ways I thought were really good. So, and then of course I have another friend who's begging me to watch The Leftovers, so I got a lot of shit to watch.
Well, it's The Leftovers, so you can save that for last. Oh.
Yeah. But there are only like 3 seasons of The Leftovers, so that would be a little bit easier to watch too. But I don't know. I'll figure it out.
Well, and I will say with The Wire, it's a show that is made for binging because episodes just blur into each other. And once it's one of those shows where an episode will end and you'll be like, oh my God, I have to go to the next episode like immediately. Although I will say this though, Hawk, and this is where it becomes a little easier. Each individual season of The Wire is relatively self-contained. So you can watch a season of The Wire and then skip and do something else, and then come back and do season 2, because there is a set arc from beginning to end at each season.
It's just really frustrating because so far this week I've been incredible. I'm on vacation, and I've been incredibly productive with stuff at home. Like, you know, I'm taking my online classes for this and that. I'm doing a lot more writing. I'm getting a lot of cleaning done, and just now I've got this fucking show to watch. It's going to take up all my time now again.
and you also have to make sure to get in some Len Kapuzinski.
Yeah, and
oh boy,
we'll talk about it next week, and then we'll probably do our own mini episode on the movies. But I'm having such an awful time getting through these movies. But
well, it is called Hawk and Ken Survive for a reason.
It is, exactly. This is not about enjoying what we do. It's about...
And the good news, though, is we're going in order of worst to best, so we should be getting into something good. Right.
Which reminds me, next time we got to do best to worst, because that's better.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the psychological impact of the knife twisting slowly and just getting worse and worse as the week goes on becomes an endurance test, which results in greater mental stamina.
Wow. So, in other words, you are, once again, proving to be a masochist.
Absolutely. It's getting real bad.
I just imagine you like putting on a Medea movie and like having a dominatrix in the background whipping you while you're watching it. Oh yeah, make this worse.
That far. I wouldn't take it that far. But I will say that in the monthly pick for, you know, divvying up the movies to be assigned for review, my top 2 picks were Geostorm and a Medea Halloween 2.
Oh, God. So speaking of a Medea Halloween 2, 9/11.
Yes.
All right. Well, I don't even want to think about what a Medea 9/11 movie would be like.
Oh my God! The planes are hitting the tower, baby.
It actually, you know what? It probably wouldn't be too different from the Charlie Sheen version, just with Tyler Perry instead.
It's worth noting that Charlie Sheen is a vested 9/11 truther, and just as early as 3 weeks ago, he was reiterating these beliefs on an interview.
Yeah, that was. It's not like you would think when promoting a movie like this that isn't about the truther movement in any way or about that message, that he would be probably putting his own personal views in the back seat. You know, on these interviews, like he might just go, "Well, you know, Tom, that's just my personal take on it." But what this movie is covering is the victims and the da-da-da-da. You know, he could be marketing it different. Instead of, "Oh no, I really do believe that shit."
Yeah. So first of all, for those seeing the movie 9/11, the entire movie basically takes place in a fucking elevator, with the exception of a couple of shots here and there and some stock footage,
which is almost worse.
If you ever saw Devil?
I'm ashamed to admit that I kind of really think Devil is pretty clever.
Cue the Kirk.
Yeah, right.
It's not a bad movie. Like, I think that
it's not a bad movie, really. Like, didn't the security guards say that if toast falls a certain way, it means there's a curse?
Yeah. That's if you toss a piece of toast in the air, and if it lands jam side down, it means that there's an evil presence, and he does it and lands jam side down, and it was like, holy shit, there's a fucking demon in here.
Yeah, or you could also say that because you've put jam on that side of toast is heavier and therefore more likely to land on.
You know what else makes toast heavy?
9/11.
Evil makes toast.
Damn it.
No, Devil that reminds me of Walk Hard. You remember Walk Hard, where he sings the song about holding hands and his dad hates it, and it's like, you know who else has hands, son? The devil, and he uses them for holding. But no, Devil is not to derail this too much, but Devil has a lot of issues with almost all of it. But I think it kind of, when it comes to the elevator stuff, it kind of nails the claustrophobic thriller concept, which I'm imagining 9/11
so
is not
is confirmed for loving 9/11 then.
I was going to say, I finished. I said which I would imagine 9/11 does not do effectively.
It actually
no 9/11 doesn't do that effectively at all.
You know what? I will say, Bill. Oh God, I'm about to say a defensive phrase.
Dude, don't.
To this movie's credit, the one thing they do okay is the claustrophobia, and it is the only reason they do that okay is because they clearly couldn't afford to shoot anything else, because the only times the movie opens up to a bigger palette, you've got the worst, ugliest, like you ever play the Sega Saturn and see whenever the Sega Saturn tries to register something as transparent, it didn't have the technology to do that, and so it looked like mesh. Yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just look it up. It's a thing. That's what the fog looks like in this movie. It looks like there's
it's very clearly CG'd smoke. There's a scene in the movie. They're stuck in to set this movie up. Basically, this group of people, Charlie Sheen, Gina Gershon, a bike messenger. Charlie Sheen plays a rich guy. His Gershon plays his wife who wants a divorce. In fact, that's why they're at the tower, is to get the paperwork signed and done with. There's a bike messenger. There's a maintenance man, and there's just some random woman. And they're stuck in an elevator once the first plane hits the North Tower. They're stuck on like the 30th something floor, so they're around that point. And they're in an elevator that has apparently a specific lock on the doors that won't allow it to fully open.
For insurance purposes.
For insurance purposes.
I can actually vouch for
yes, that was an interesting detail that I thought was not necessary, but kind of in the same way. Like I was like, all right, they did some research, I guess.
That kind of feels like that kind of feels like a piece of plot that might have led into something else in the story, and then they decided that they didn't want to be that red button, and then backed off.
They do actually go back to it a little later to try to unlock the lock mechanism.
Yeah, the movie tries to be a small contained thriller in that all of the action is happening inside the elevator, which could put, I'm not saying that that's a bad idea for a movie, but the way they do it, the dialogue, that's the problem. If you're going to make a movie where you're putting a group of 5 people in an elevator and they can't go anywhere, you got to have dialogue that is not painful to listen to for 90 minutes.
Well, not to mention also, that the whole idea of a claustrophobic thriller that takes place in one area is to emphasize the characters, and when the characters speak, they kind of unpack more elements of themselves that make for interesting drama and how they play off each other and grow, and you learn more about their backstory. But
yes,
the setting of 9/11 is totally, from as an outside observer to the movie, having not seen it, the 9/11 event does not sound like a ripe event for this type of format.
It's not.
Honestly, I think under the right conditions with a good writer, you could make something like that work. But the problem is you are balanced. Well, before you say no, Bill, you are balancing. Okay, stop for a second. If you're going to do that, you are balancing the entire movie's drama on a pin that threatens to go off and become terrible at any minute. I don't believe
that's not a good metaphor, but I guess you're.
I was trying to get a metaphor in there, but I couldn't. The fact is that I think you can make a movie set during just about any scenario if the writing is there. The problem is that under certain circumstances, you make it desperately impossible for that to become successful. That's why, you look at Jerry Lewis, The Day the Clown Cried. The idea of a clown performing for children in a concentration camp during the Holocaust, and that Jerry endeavored to make the movie funny and thought-provoking. You could possibly manage that. In fact, I would argue Roberto Benigni, to an extent, pulled it off with Life is Beautiful. Not, clown, but his character is kind of clownish. But when you do that, it's almost a miracle when you get away with it.
Yeah. It should be noted that this movie is based on a play called Elevator. I believe it does take place during 9/11, but that part of it is more like, I guess, from what I understand about the play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna say, what if they just took a screen? They took a stage play about people trapped in an elevator, and then they just injected 9/11 to that.
Oh God.
Well, you know, everything about this movie screams pure exploitation of the event.
Oh, for sure.
For starters, it's used as a gimmick just to, you know, bring people in. If anyone was going to be brought
calling
into this,
the movie 9/11 is
calling it 9/11. Yes,
is shameless.
It is absolutely shameless, shameful, and also releasing it on an anniversary weekend.
I'll tell you how you could pull it off, and make it being on 9/11 like a dramatic, interesting element. What if you made this movie about people getting stuck in an elevator and that's all you advertised, and then it came out like a half hour into the movie that's just where the elevator happens to be, and suddenly you've got all of this drama that hits because you realize, oh shit, now this is happening. You know, if you pulled a twist like that,
maybe, but even then, it would be about the twist. It wouldn't be about the characters.
Well, right. I mean, you'd have to spend some good quality time. That's why I'm thinking a half hour to maybe 40 minutes in. You have to spend time with these characters, getting to know them, and really making you like these characters. That's another problem. I would say, with the possible exception of Luis Guzman, you don't like anyone in this movie.
I don't even like Luis Guzman in this. I thought he was terrible.
Yeah, nobody likes him anymore. It's not cool to like him anymore.
The only reason
I normally like him I like him as an individual, as a person.
Yeah,
you know, I think he comes off like a very cool guy who does movies because he wants to do them and he loves what he does. But in this movie, he plays a maintenance man at the World Trade Center who's friends with the elevator security
operator,
control center woman, played by Whoopi Goldberg, and she's almost like the voice of God in this movie. She's the voice they hear over the intercom.
She is the voice who tells
in the elevator.
She's basically
what's happening.
Who conveys the fact that a 9/11 is happening outside.
She's like, I think there's been an attack, baby. We're under attack, baby. And everyone in the room in the elevator goes, "Oh shit, man, are you kidding me?" And they all start crying. And I was like,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, is there a character trapped in the elevator who is pregnant?
No.
Oh wow, that's good on them. I mean,
they may have been in the 9/11 lore, in the 9/11 universe, in the extended. But not in this elevator. In this elevator, no, there are no pregnant women.
What would a 9/11 cinematic universe look like?
It already exists because you've got this, you've got World Trade Center, and you've got
United 93.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't even call this.
Guess what? You know what also fits in? You've got that Adam Sandler movie, Reign Over Me.
Yep.
Yeah, like literally, let's make it so that every movie that references 9/11 is part of a cinematic universe.
I think you bring up a good point, but there's also a clear distinction that needs to be made. This is 9/11 exploitation. Those movies are just using 9/11
to make money.
Genuinely, okay, but there was creativity and there was actual care put in.
Respect for
did have
there was respect put in.
I would say Paul Greengrass definitely cared about what he was doing. Oliver Stone was a director for hire, but the actors.
Yeah. That's if you buy into the auteur theory, which is fine. But what I'm getting at is those movies were even made with some level of care, and touchiness. Yeah. They weren't going to go, even though they got Oliver Stone, a guy who is potentially a truther. I don't think he's ever full on came out as one. He could potentially be one. And
I think we all know that he is, though.
Yeah, we kind of figure he is. But
he's a truther about other things. That's for sure.
Yes, yeah. But the point being is he did the movie and he was like, we're going to pay respects to the victims and the heroes, that kind of thing. So this wasn't like, anything that was done specifically to make the story more interesting or to spice things up. Or the worst part of this movie is it's a Charlie Sheen vanity vehicle.
Yeah. And
throughout the film, Charlie Sheen is seen as his character is this rich guy who immediately you should probably be disliking because he's the rich guy in an independent movie, and the movie's got nothing else really going for it. So
they literally play the reverse race card in that he is he is profiled by a black person as being a rich snob, and Charlie Sheen gets to be all like Charlie Sheen and the character playing his soon-to-be ex-wife are getting all like angry with him because of because
no, he built himself up from his bootstraps, sir. He did this and that. His dad worked in a factory and da 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 da. So you know nothing about our lives, that kind of thing. And the guy's like, if we get out of this, I'm going to hire you.
Mm-hmm.
Hire you. I'm going to pay you money to work for me. That's what's going to happen to you. Your life is going to change. I'm a great guy.
We have to address the single worst line of the movie, which is the scene in the movie where Charlie Sheen's soon-to-be ex-wife she's angry at Sheen because Sheen has just decided not to sign the divorce document, and she says, "You're making this decision. You're changing our plans all in the 9th hour," and he looks at her and goes, "You mean the 11th hour?"
Yes.
Because
you told me about that.
They're trying to subtly plant 9 and 11 in your head.
Even though we already know, because that's the title of the movie.
What does that even mean, though?
Specified. Yeah, I know.
The premise of the line is supposed to be that the phrase 11th hour is a thing. You're doing this in the 11th hour, but she said 9th hour first. And so the screenwriters behind this movie were just so incredibly proud of the achievement of making the symbolic scene where the words 9 and 11 are spoken together. So in your mind you think, oh man, isn't that artful, because it's 9/11 and they said 9/11.
It's truly terrible. And the dialogue, we got into this a little bit, but the dialogue in the elevator itself is horrible. Like, for not just what they say specifically, they never get anything close to an arc for any character.
No.
Everyone just stays the same. They're just in there trying to figure out a way to live. They're like, what the fuck is going on? I want to get out of this elevator. Help me. That's literally the type of
Charlie
context
Sheen,
of the dialogue.
I have to say, towards the end of the movie, Charlie Sheen, he pulls what I like to call a Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yes.
At the end of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, James Stewart famously had someone swab his throat with mercury in order to make him sound more hoarse, so that it sounds like he's really being weather beaten.
He's like, get out of the elevator, honey.
Oh yeah, at the end of the movie, his voice is all like this. And he has the
he pulls a death metal Batman, basically.
Oh, totally. In fact, there's this yell he makes when he realizes, because you know what, fuck it, spoiler alert, he dies. Anyway,
he's the only one that dies.
Yeah,
him and the fireman.
Yeah, Charlie Sheen is the only person who died on 9/11, according to this movie.
Well, from the elevator.
Not really, but that's the movie is as good as says that. But that's
Basically, what happens is everyone in the elevator gets out, but at the last second before Charlie Sheen's character gets out, the elevator drops just a couple extra feet, which basically means that he can't fit through the door. So everyone leaves except for one fireman. He's like, I'm going to stay behind and help you, which of course is what they do. That's an awesome thing. So he goes over. He goes to the door and he gets on top of the elevator, opens the shaft. He's trying to lift Charlie Sheen out of it, and then you hear in the background the beginnings of the building falling, and then you cut to Charlie Sheen's face as he closes his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the movie ends.
When it ends.
The movie ends with an end credit saying this movie is dedicated to the victims and the heroes of 9/11. It's very reminiscent of the ending of Miami Connection, saying we want to achieve peace in the world, not violence.
Only by the elimination of violence can be
Can we achieve world peace? It's just like that. It has that same kind of punctuation feeling. It's like another stab in the back.
It's an
like,
unearned, poignant.
Yes, it's like after all this shit, you're gonna really pull that on us.
You just when you said the fireman, it's what he does. You made me think of the Geico commercials.
Oh yeah, that's what he does.
If Charlie's seen stuck in an elevator and you're a fireman, you stay behind to help him. It's what you do.
That's what you do. I thought you were gonna reference that Charlie Sheen movie where he plays a fireman who's crazy.
Oh God! So now.
I forget the name of the movie, but we talked about it once on the Pubcast. Charlie Sheen plays a fireman who purposefully leaves a black woman who's poor and can't feed her kids to die in a fire because he doesn't agree with the way she lives.
Wait, is this a thing?
Yeah, that was a movie. And then he also terrorizes the people that live next door.
Oh God! Well, so it's a documentary.
How old is this?
It was like mid-90s.
Charlie Sheen Lives Next Door, the movie.
I forget the name of the movie, I swear, but it exists. It was on HBO all the time. Let me you keep talking. I'll Google something.
Is it Loose Women from 1996?
No. Bad Day on the. It's called. It was one of the titles for the movie was Bad Day on the Block,
but it was also called Under Pressure.
It was also called Under Pressure. Yes.
Okay,
it was
I know that one.
I believe.
Pushing down on me.
It was 97.
People on the street.
99, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, that's the movie. That's the movie, the fucking movie, where he plays this evil fireman. I thought you were going to reference that.
Oh, that's still funny though. So it's worth noting. I kind of looked at some production credits for this movie. It is directed by Martin Guigui. Guigui is how you pronounce his last name.
yes, Martin Squeegee.
Yeah, Martin
Squeegee.
Oh yeah, well he's just he's if you're talking about the auteur theory, he's the director of movies like The Bronx Bowl
or Rock Candy Funk Party 1, 2, and 3.
Or wait, no, I'm sorry, he didn't direct The Bronx. Oh no, he did direct The Bronx.
No. Okay, what's really weird about 9/11 is how the movie opens with its credit sequence. It just says produced by or written by and then directed by. It doesn't go through studios necessarily, or if it does it very quickly. It doesn't do a whole cast listing or whatever. It just goes right into who directed it.
He also directed National Lampoon's Cattle Call.
The other writer of the movie is basically he produced the Anger Management TV show and was a production accountant on a handful of films, and that's it.
Oh, okay.
So this kind of just came out.
Yeah.
Coming out.
I'll have to watch it.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, if it's playing near you, I would recommend go seeing it, but use your movie pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, knowing that you're a glutton for punishment, Hawk, yeah, go see the movie.
All right.
So
it's transfixing.
And I don't have a good segue here, but for Hawk and I, our weekly movie exchange, the movie we'll close out this episode with is The Day of the Jackal.
I did have one more show to talk about after that, though.
Oh, you did?
The Strain?
All right. We'll get to that in a moment then. Yeah, The Jackal is it's from 1973, directed by Fred Zinnemann.
The Day of the Jackal, is this based off of Ted Cruz's porn tweet?
I wish.
The Day of the Jackal?
The Day of the Jacked Off.
He was jacking on 9/11.
You were really proud of that one, weren't you, Bill?
Hey, I mean, dude, I was there on Twitter when it was all happening, when it went down. Just like when Kofifi happened. No, I don't follow Ted Cruz, but when the news broke that he liked a porn tweet, then everyone just jumped on it. Like that was the most important thing in the universe to get us away from misery.
So Fred Zinnemann, this was actually one of his last films. He was a filmmaker who really created some of the most transcendent movies of his generation. Besides The Day of the Jackal, he directed A Man for All Seasons. He directed From Here to Eternity, High Noon. And those are, first of all, High Noon alone is one of the great all-time westerns, and a movie that was notorious in its time for the way it subtly went after, it went after the sort of McCarthyists in the government at the time, and was decried as a work of communism, because it's a movie about a Western hero who decides to defend a town that's not really worth defending, because everyone in it's a coward who doesn't want to show their face. But The Day of the Jackal is a very procedural, almost documentary-like story about a professional assassin hired by splinter members of the French military, who are angry that the French has decided to abandon Algeria, and they hire the Jackal to kill Charles de Gaulle, who was then the president of France. The film is set in the early mid-1960s, so it was a bit of a period piece, but it stars Edward Fox as the Jackal, and also has a performance from Michael Lonsdale, a French actor. Is it Michael or Michel? I'm not entirely certain, but he's a actor who has had many roles. He's probably one of the more prominent French actors of his time. He was in actually in the James Bond movie Moonraker. He was Hugo Drax, the main villain. He was in Ronin. He was in Munich. But anyway, first of all, I'll just ask you, Hawk, what did you think of The Day of the Jackal?
I thought it was pretty good. I thought the pacing was a little bit off. There were parts where it dragged, but I think seeing how meticulous that the Jackal was with preparing and also getting out of situations was probably the best part of the movie. He was kind of pitched as this Anton Chigurh style unstoppable force,
right?
Which is always a great thing for a thriller.
And to his credit, Edward Fox really delivers that suave kind of performance as someone who he can be whatever people around him want him to be.
Yeah.
And on one hand,
kind of like Bruce Willis.
Oh God, the Bruce Willis Jackal. Only worthwhile for the scene in which Jack Black gets killed. because it's a young Jack Black, and seeing him in any movie as a young person is kind of fascinating. I think he was like 18 when he did the Jackal. It's pretty
good. What about that rollerblade movie? Airborne?
Yeah, Airborne. He was also in what is it? Neverending Story 3, and he was also in Tim Robbins' political movie Bob Roberts, all when he was like basically a teenager, early 20-something. But terrible movie though. Do not watch the 1996 or 7 movie The Jackal. But The Day of the Jackal, a few things. Of course, you mentioned the way it deals with his character and setting him up as this force of nature. On the other hand, you have the authorities who are investigating, and they make it clear. There's kind of blurred lines in terms of morality, because they make it clear that the French government, who is trying to investigate, when they discover they discover the plot to kill Charles de Gaulle through torture in this brutal fucking sequence where you see a brief glimpse of this torture happening, and then they cut away, and all you see are the investigators listening to the tape of the torture and trying to make out what he was saying, because he was so fucked up from the torture that he was basically not, you couldn't understand a word he was saying anymore. And one of the things they make out from it is the name Jackal, and that's where that code name is sort of where their investigation starts.
Yeah, it's also based, considering that torture sequence, this is, I believe, a PG-rated film.
It is a 70s PG-rated film, and in the 70s, you could have blood, violence, nudity.
I did think that his when he kills the lady he was sleeping with, that wasn't very evident that that's what he was doing.
Yeah, I will give you that. That they didn't make it very clear that he was snapping her neck.
Yeah, he kind of strangles her, but really, I knew this because I wasn't sure what happened, so I looked it up on Wikipedia, and it's like, oh yeah, after they bang again, then he finds out that she was talking to the police, and then he strangles her. And in the movie, he kind of just reaches over and rests a hand on her neck and kisses her, and then when he gets up, she's not moving.
Yeah, well, there is a shot of her hand going limp, but you're right.
Yeah.
They don't. I would say that's certainly it's a reflection of, in the 60s and early 70s, they were still trying to figure out what I like to call action blocking. And that's why you'll have a lot of fight sequences that feel a little awkward. And that's why, like James Bond, if you watch like James Bond movies and he does the judo chop, it is so wimpy. And it's sort of like that, where it's like, I don't think they quite figured out yet what the movement had to look like for it to legitimately be selling that he kills the person.
You know what movie has excellent action blocking is Orgasmo.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Especially the T-Rex scene.
It's T-Rex, and then when he fights off all the guards with martial arts, like that was pretty convincing martial arts.
Of course, that movie was made in the 90s, and I would say the reason why the 80s was kind of the golden age of action is because that's when they really figured it out that the majority of the people in a stunt sequence should be stuntmen, because they know how to make fights look real.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of good movies in the 70s that have action sequences that they don't quite hold up, and I think they were still just starting to figure it out, how to make it work. But anyway, another thing I will say about this movie, and I mentioned this to Hawk yesterday in our conversation, is that if you're at all a fan of the movie The Battle of Algiers, this movie, in a way, kind of feels almost like a weird like spin-off of that, because the Battle of Algiers tells the story of how France was driven to abandon Algiers and give them independence by a revolution movement. And this movie picks up right as that has happened and devises another story about it. And much like the Battle of Algiers, much of this movie is depicted in a near documentary-like fashion. Not quite as obsessively as the Battle of Algiers, but very, in a similar vein, I would say. Now, if you've never seen it, I have to recommend that movie to anyone. Have you seen it, Bill? It seems like something you might.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, you would agree that movie is pretty spectacular.
Yes, it's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to compare it to that because it's a completely different movie. I'm just saying because it deals with subject matter that sort of spins off of it, and with that documentary fashion that the movie kind of feels, you can almost argue that this feels like a continuance or a spin-off of it. Completely, of course, with the difference being that the French people in this speak English as opposed to, the French people speaking French, God forbid. All right. So overall, I would say it's a solid thriller that has a lot of things that it sets up are influential to modern thrillers in terms of the way the killer is depicted, and a lot of tropes there. For instance, the killer going around to his experts, like the gun expert, and the expert shows him, what he's built, and you have the guy who made passports for him that betrays him, and so he proceeds to murder him. it's a pretty great sequence when he murders that guy and throws him in the trunk.
Yeah, that was good. That was one of my favorite scenes because the guy thinks that he's all hot shit and can blackmail the Jackal, and the Jackal's like, you thought, and then just fucking kills him and drops, puts the body weight and strolls out of the room.
I could pay you, or I could murder you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the long story short. This is a movie that's worth hunting down, and we'll go ahead.
And you can, because it's on Stars.
It is on Stars and worth watching. If you because Edward Fox is an actor who he never really got a huge break, but he was in a good run of movies in the 70s. And if you are at all interested, he has a great role in A Bridge Too Far. He has a solid role in The Battle of Britain.
He plays M in the James Bond movie You Only Live Twice, I think.
Never Say Never Again, the unofficial James Bond movie.
Okay.
Yes, he is M in that. He's also in one of my favorite movies, actually, Paul Verhoeven's Soldier of Orange. He plays a British soldier who trains Rutger Hauer.
Oh.
So if you've never seen Soldier of Orange, one of the best World War II movies ever made. So, all right, we'll go ahead and move along. Moving right along.
A brief aside before I talk about something. John Woo has made another action movie.
Okay.
I saw this earlier today. John Woo, he made The Killer, Hard Boiled, a lot of Face Off, a lot of really good action movies. And then he kind of just stopped doing that. He made drama war films like Red Cliff,
which is, to be fair, also kind of an action movie.
Kind of, but in a different way. Like, it doesn't have the bombast that John Woo was kind of like known for. Mm-hmm. But here, I'm pulling up the page again.
The movie is called Manhunt.
Yep, Manhunt. Legendary action director John Woo and his 7 screenwriters.
Oh, God.
Sorry. In the end, there are only a limited number of basic plots to draw upon from the Asian police genre. John Woo and his 7 screenwriters dispense with all of them in Manhunt, leaving just a string of sophisticated and thrilling set pieces.
7 screenwriters. So what is it, like every scene is a new story or something?
No, I mean, this is Hollywood Reporter, so they're probably talking about anybody that even touched the screenplay. But the fact that they don't really emphasize the fact that there's so many screenwriters is probably indicates to me that is the norm for movies of this genre. But they don't always get the credit for it. Like one of the writers on Thor Ragnarok is not going to get credit for her contributions. Marvel is going to give her a story by credit, but the Writers Guild, based on their rules, said no, you're not going to get that. So, in any case, I don't need to get too much into that. I am really excited to try to hunt down Manhunt, just as I am. I keep hearing about The Villainous, which is a South Korean action revenge movie, which is all of my favorite things in movies. So I'm looking forward to trying to find that one as well.
I like action. I like adventures. I like South Korea. This is all of my favorite things.
And revenge. Because that's my bread and butter, as everybody knows.
Well, revenge is tasty, and as the old Klingon proverb says, it's a dish best served cold.
Yes, indeed. And that jackass Gandhi, or whatever his name is, he said that if you're trying to get revenge, dig 2 graves, one for them and one for yourself.
You just called Gandhi a jackass.
It wasn't Gandhi that said that. It was somebody else that I can't remember who it was.
Okay.
But anyway, I just finished watching season 1 of The Strain. I know, Ken, you haven't watched it. Have you, Bill?
No, I haven't.
It's fun. It's from a book that book series that Guillermo del Toro wrote with Chuck Hogan, another novelist, and they made it into a TV series on FX. I mean, I'm watching it on Hulu. That's where it streams.
Confucius. Before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves.
Yeah, him. So,
all right. Sorry,
Gandhi, Confucius, whatever.
Yeah, I guess I was confused over who said that quote. That was good. So the strain is about a pathogen that infects New York, and instead of the Steven Soderbergh Contagion movie where you just get sick and die, you turn into a vampire. And they kind of like do more with that instead of just biting people. That you have a long tentacle-like tongue with teeth that comes out and latches on people's neck and kills them with that. And they add extra flavor to the plot where this is like at least the second resurgence of the outbreak, because there has been a very evil ancient vampire called the Master who's been waiting for decades for this pathogen to come back around. One of his right-hand men is an SS officer from the Holocaust. One of the main characters is a Holocaust survivor who directly interacted with this officer, and he's also this Holocaust survivor is also a vampire hunter. He is played by the guy that Ken, you haven't seen Harry Potter, but Bill, you've seen the Harry Potter movies, right?
Some of them, yeah. The
guy that plays Filch, the caretaker with the cat.
Oh yeah,
he plays the old vampire hunter guy, which is fucking awesome. He has a walking cane, and when he sees a vampire, he'll say a prayer in Romanian, and then the cane is actually a sword, and he pulls it out and just fucking cuts the head off of the vampire. Corey Stoll is the main character. He works for the part of the government that the Centers for Disease Control, and it's him, the vampire hunter guy, a Russian pest control guy played by named Vasily, who's played by Kevin Durand. What is that?
Yeah, what is that?
What is what?
There's noise in the background of some yeah.
I have no idea.
Sound like if someone was playing a video?
Or someone was talking or something, yeah.
Okay.
Weird.
I did not hear any.
Ken was watching porn. He doesn't want to admit it.
He probably liked it on Twitter, too.
Was it coming through on my side or something?
I couldn't tell. I think it did, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, oh, shoot. I actually just checked one of my tabs, and it looks like a video is playing automatically, but I'm not hearing it, so I don't know how you guys are.
It's probably gone by now, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anymore, but
it's fine. It's no big deal.
I'm not a huge fan of The Walking Dead. I like it a lot. I like what they're doing, but it never really sucked me in like it does for most people. The Strain is kind of my Walking Dead. Like, I like the characters. I like the whole feeling of the world falling apart. One of the best scenes in the entire show is there is a solar eclipse. And of course, vampires can only survive in, when it's not light outside. So there's a solar eclipse, and the entire city is bathed in this golden light, but it's still kind of dark because the moon's in front of the sun. But that is time enough for the vampires to all come out and start infecting other people, which is, a great sense of chaos. And then, of course, the main villain, the Master, is some of the most awesome and frightening makeup work I have seen in a TV show in probably ever. Like, it's so cool seeing when the Master first appears. He just has glowing orange eyes beneath a hood, and he pulls the hood back, and there's this like really grotesque this grotesque villain character. Like, this is absolutely something that Guillermo del Toro would make, and it has his fingerprints all over it.
So at any time does so you said he's the Master. Does Torgo appear?
No.
And did music play like da, 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 da?
No. Sorry.
Did you even catch my reference?
I am Torgo. I take care of the place while the Master is away.
Different kind of Master.
Mm-hmm.
It also has the guy. Remember the Richie Rich movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
The butler.
The guy who played the dad in Jumanji as well as the bad guy in Jumanji.
Yeah, he's a bad guy in The Strain too. He's like a super ultra mega rich dude who is prolonging his life by constantly getting transplants from organs off the black market. And he's got kind of a fun role too. Everything about this show is sinister, but it's also really really fucking gory and kind of cheeky too. So it's a very fun show. So it remains to be seen if how it'll change, because I have heard from several people that season 1 is the best, and then it kind of gets worse after that. So I'm gonna keep watching and see how much better or worse it gets. But so far, it's such a fun concept and entertaining show that I'm really into it. So that's the TV show streaming recommendation for me.
All right. Anyone else have any streaming recommendations?
Nah.
Well then, with that having been said, we will be seeing you next week. And this weekend, as far as the new releases, we are getting American Assassin and Mother.
There's one more, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
What was it?
I doubt I'll be
I think
watching.
Beauty and some animated movies are getting a re-release this weekend.
Maybe not.
Sure,
yeah, it must be. I don't know. It must be.
The only thing I know is tomorrow evening, Miyazaki's very first directorial feature, Lupin III: The Castle of Cagliostro, is getting a theatrical re-release.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Only affair. If you haven't seen it, it is worth seeing. I've seen it a couple times, and it's actually a really fun movie because it's sort of almost a spy spoof. And the character Lupin III is like always on the lookout for for profit, and it really kind of a fun story. So I may or may not be going to see that depending on my schedule. So. All right. On that bombshell, see you next week.
Okay.
Bye.
Cool story, bro.